The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Sleepy Hollow was the quietest place in the world. Besides being hunting, nothing much happened there until the night of the Vantage party. Ichabod Crane marched into the party with his head held high, his tall body with his head held up, this tall frame and bushy clothes, resembling a scarecrow. He was at the party for one reason. Katina Vantage. Katina stood up at the party like a red rose on a snowy day. She chatted with Brown Van Boots. He was broad-shouldered and strong. Brown enjoyed riding around his horse daringly. He was known for pulling pranks and causing mischief around town. Brown Van Boots also liked Katrina. Ichabod mustered his resolve and went straight up to them. "Excuse me, Katrina," Ichabod said. "Would you care to dance?" Brown Van Boots' face turned as red as a boiling lobster. "I love to dance," Katrina said as she grasped Ichabod's hand. Ichabod and Katrina twirled around the dance floor as if there were no tomorrow. Their joyful and lively dancing caught the attention of everyone at the party. Ichabod imagined he could dance his way right into Katrina's heart. The longer Ichabod and Katrina danced, the more jealous Brown Van Boots became. When the band took a break, Ichabod and Katrina stopped for a drink at the punch bowl. There stood Brown sharing ghost story with a group of friends. "I will tell you the scariest ghost story of all," said Brown Van Boots. He started diggily at Ichabod. "Have you ever heard of the Headless Horseman?" "No," Ichabod murmured and gulped. Brown began to whisper, and the group leaned in closer. Every night at midnight, he rides to town on his horse, looking for his missing head. Brown said, "I seen him with my very own eyes. I was riding along late at night when this fellow came trotting up. I asked him if he wanted a race. He didn't say a word because he didn't have a head." So I took off on Devlin from below, and he came turning up behind me. I raced him right up to the trench bridge. Once his horse stepped foot on the bridge, he disappeared in a flash of fire. He and I stood in tense silence. If you ever see the headless horseman, Brown Van Boot said, head to the other side of the Jones Bridge. Otherwise, you are done for. Of course, if you as fast as me, you have nothing to worry about. That was really brave of you, Katrina said. She looked at Braun with delightful and amaze. Ichabod took one look at Braun and grumbled. Great imagined story. Jealous of Katrina elements for Braun, Ichabod took her hand and pulled her towards the dance floor. They danced to a few more songs, but Brown Van Boot's story was stuck in Ichabod's head. Just before midnight, Ichabod said farewell to Conchina and promised to visit her soon. Then he climbed on the tired old plow horse he has borrowed from a local farmer and set off home. The wind whistled through the branches, and owl shrieked. The headless horseman filled Ichabod's mind. He attempted to sing to soothe himself, but the normal stirring his voice caught in his throat. When he heard another sound coming up behind him, a horse. The horse and rider trotted up next to Ichabod, but it was too dark to see them. Good evening, Ichabod said. The rider said nothing. Up ahead, Ichabod could make out to the church bridge. He started to ride a little faster. The rider matched his pace. This is strange. For we haven't, Ichabod said, trying to make concess. Again, the rider said nothing. The moon slid out from behind a cloud. Ichabod looked over at the rider and froze. The rider has no head. In his hand, the rider held a huge pumpkin that seemed to grow in the moonlight. He raised it high above where his head should have been as it burst into flames. Ichabod screamed and kicked the sides of his horse. The horse barely split up. The safety of the truant bird waiting up ahead. Faster! Ichabod yelled to his old plough horse. Almost there. The rider was close, but then Ichabod heard his horse stubborn stomp on the wood bridge. His sight was refreshed. I made it! Ichabod screamed. He heard the rider horse behind him. He turned to look from the safety of the bridge. A flash of flame rushed towards him, and all went dark. The next morning, a schoolboy discovered Ichabod's horse running in a field by the jug. On the group next to the old bridge, he found Ichabod's hat and a squirrel pumpkin. Ichabod himself has disappeared. Not long after Ichabod vanished from Sleeping Hollow, Katina and Brom were merry. When folks' stories about Ichabod came, Brom and Woods always smiled. Some say Brom drove Ichabod away. Those who knew about such things snore the headless horseman has taken him away on that dark night.